Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Max Rants and Rambles. And this week, we're going to talk about Ubisoft, the current happenings with Ubisoft, the company, the developer, the publisher. And so, this was sparked because I was on the good old Reddit, and I saw a comment. It was about a meme about Ubisoft being on life support, and it was like, did we at least own the chuds? And I thought it was funny because it was one of those subs where it's like, can someone explain this meme to me? And all the comments were at war about like what Ubisoft had done wrong to earn the ire of the public. And so I do think this is a multifaceted thing because Ubisoft has a lot of problems. They're deserving of a lot of criticism, but also a lot of the criticism that is currently affecting their business and stuff is from, certain people. So let's dive into it and talk about it a little bit. So, if you're from my era, which is I'm in my 30s and growing up in the early 2000s, Ubisoft was kind of on fire back in the day, and it took them a while to get there. And they made games like Rayman and Prince of Persia, but after so many hits, they started to build up these big franchises. And I would say like the one that kind of broke through to the mainstream, other than Prince of Persia, with like Sands of Time, would be the Assassin's Creed series. And so I think Ubisoft kind of cemented their style with that game. And then Far Cry was kind of inspired by, I think, Assassin's Creed in a lot of ways, and that became another pillar of their franchises. So going back to the 2000s, Ubisoft was doing a lot of good things. They had a lot of talented people there. The guy who made Prince of Persia Sands of Time, and then would go on to make Assassin's Creed, because a lot of people might not know, but Assassin's Creed started as like a prequel to the Prince of Persia games. So yeah, there's just some interesting lore there. I do think they made some great games back in the day. They made games with Eric Chahi, who did like From Dust, and then some amazing games. So Ubisoft in the 2000s and even into the 2010s was doing some things right, but just like a lot of big corporate like structure or like game developer publishers hybrid things, for everything they were doing right, they were also very much a boys club. It's a lot like the Activision Blizzard story, where if you read about it, there is a lot of sexual harassment. There's a lot of bosses being inappropriate towards subordinates. There was a lot of abuse. And so, Ubisoft, the company, you see them on one side, they're making games with like Nintendo, like the Rabbids, which I think are iconic now in their own right. But then on the other side, a lot of those same people who are involved in some of these games and involved in, forging some of these big relationships, were doing heinous sex crimes and stuff. So I think that is one of the biggest, like for a normal human being who is not trying to be overly political, I just think, it's not good to do bad things to other humans. And that's really it. So I think, but spinning out of that is, the current conversation, which largely spun out of, conversations about the Assassin's Creed Shadows was. I haven't played a lot of Assassin's Creed since they went more like RPG and went away from like action parkour games and more of this like progression and like I don't know, open world games. So I never really got into the like Odyssey and stuff. So personally, not my thing. They're not bad games, but I think a lot of people look at the fact that now games can have like a black protagonist or a female protagonist, and they see these things as forced like DEI stuff. And like, you can have opinions one way or another about certain topics like this, but ultimately more representation is not a bad thing. I think people are just very resistant to change, and that unfortunately there will be always these people who fight against better representation in media, like such as making the Prince of Persia appear more outwardly Persian as a great example of like some people looked at like the Prince of Persia like side scroller Metroidvania game where he had like kind of more dread style hair, and people were like, look at this, and it's like it's a game about a Persian guy. I don't know. It's just kind of like you're getting so mad about. I don't know. It's a lot of it is just faux outrage, right? It's just to drive online conversations. It's to drive clickbait. Sorry, I'm turning my TV on since it gives me a little bit of light, and I'm gonna take a sip because I'm talking. But yes, ultimately, I don't think a lot of this conversation around Assassin's Creed Shadows was really earnest. I think it's a lot of people who are online content creators who are driving the conversation and making this like their spearhead of like, look, they're taking a beloved franchise you love and they making the antagonist or the protagonist like this or that, and it's a woman or a black guy, and you can't choose. You have to choose between those. And imagine holding a racist, misogynist, or like homophobe at gunpoint. It's like, you have to choose one. Play as a black guy or a woman. They're like, I can't choose. Oh no! Like they're freaking out. I'm like, that's what I make a picture in my mind. It's like, or you could just not play the game. But I think that they took that criticism and they're like, okay, well, now we're going to tell everybody online not to play this game. We're going to drag it through the mud and make it this huge thing. And so there's some legit outrage. And then I think a lot of it is manufactured for clicks and YouTube engagement and stuff. So I think to walk down the middle path here and to say there's plenty of reasons to hate Ubisoft that are actually legitimate reasons of, like, you know, crimes that they've been accused of, and like, you can hate them, just, you know, you don't have to like be a racist to hate Ubisoft. I don't know, I guess it's just funny because how people arrive here, and it's not like I feel bad for Ubisoft. I do feel bad for the artists and like a lot of hard working employees who always end up affected by these things the most. But the executives and stuff, they never really feel the brunt of the, like, look at the Destiny situation, like, or Activision or anything. They're looking for their golden parachute. They just want to leave and walk out with the biggest sack of money they can. And I think that's pretty obvious to anybody really paying attention, is like, so, yeah, the broader conversation around Ubisoft is just, it's interesting. It's in an interesting place because personally, I'm like, yeah, Ubisoft does deserve to learn some lessons from the mistakes they've made with how they've treated their employees and the way they do business. But I don't think the current ire that they're experiencing, I don't know if I should have probably read a couple articles before talking about this, but I think they were saying, 90% loss on their stock price or something. I'm not sure how accurate that is. So basically they are not looking great as a business right now. But I don't think it's as clear cut as they made a black protagonist, you know what I mean? Or they made you play as a woman too many times. I think it's a culmination of many things, and that's just one facet of it, of just a very loud vocal minority. But people like me who are just like, I've played their games since I was a kid, and I was never really super duper like aware of the behind the scenes side of things. But when you're an adult, you can read headlines, you can read articles. It's not hard to find out, especially now in the age of the internet. Like, I mean, there are just reputable places that you can go to find out information about these giant companies. And, you know, the thing is, they only really want to point their ire at these companies when it's like, look at the Last of Us situation of people feeling very passionately about a topic and then turning that into like a crusade about it. Like, it's just like, it's really fine to feel passionately about art, and it's very fine to have your opinions and express them, but you have to kind of think about why you feel that way, and why does it make you feel these things, and examine, like, because art is designed to get a reaction out of you. There's a lot of art that's very, like, and it's not to say that you have to. There are very disturbing paintings that the whole reason I almost like stopped using Instagram is because it realized I liked art, but it was also showing me some very dark, very suicidally triggering art and stuff like that. And I'm like, nah, I don't need to see this kind of stuff. And when I realized what that was doing to me, I stopped looking. And so it's just like, if you were having a strong reaction to playing an Assassin's Creed game with a black protagonist, I guess, you know, you need to address deep down what that is for you. You need to go to therapy. So is what I'm saying. I went to therapy, and it helped me a lot to address, you know, because I deeply love art, and I deeply love video games, and I deeply love movies and looking at it. and the way it makes me feel. I love feeling melancholy. I love feeling sad or happy or, bittersweet. And there's such a range of emotions and stories to be told. And like, I don't know, you really put yourself in a box when you're like, well, I don't see me directly represented on the screen. And I know this can go both ways, but imagine it when you never see yourself represented. So there has to be a middle ground there somewhere of right. So if, I'm growing up as a white kid, almost every movie was made for me. It was like the Three Ninjas, all three brothers were white. I don't know, that's a terrible example, but you know what I mean? You're spoiled for choices. So it's like all the main characters were used, like in the original season of Power Rangers. Tommy's the Red Ranger, or not Tommy. Tommy's the Green Ranger and the White Ranger, and Jason, the other leader, is the Red Ranger, and those are the coolest ones. And there's only like one black guy, and he's the Black Ranger. Don't get me wrong, Black Ranger's fucking dope, but I just think it was the cards are stacked against people, and I think more representation is fine. And that's never, I don't know. Like I said, this criticism, I guess, is multifaceted, because I do think it's fine to feel passionately about art and want to articulate yourself and think about why you feel those ways. But a lot of people stop at kind of a surface level, I want to say, of just like never really examining, I don't know, past a certain point, I guess I'd say, of just like, you kind of have to introspect a little bit to discover why the art is affecting you in a certain way. There are definitely movies I've watched where I walked away, I'm like, or sometimes I've even had to like just turn a movie off, because I'm just like, I know what they're saying and I understand, like, I get it, but it's also just like so upsetting to me, or is so like not for me. That's fine. Know your limits or whatever it is, but I don't know. It's definitely, you have to give everything a fair shake, I guess is what it is. And a lot of people will write these things off. They'll boycott them. They'll go on X or whatever and just write their manifesto about Assassin's Creed. And it's just like, I don't know. I just don't feel that deeply about it anymore. Here's the thing. I love Assassin's Creed. I remember the day Assassin's Creed 2 came out and Left 4 Dead 2 came out the same night, and I was so broke, and I still walked out. I bought $120 plus tax. Actually, maybe not, because I was in New Hampshire. But I walked out. I bought Assassin's Creed 2 and Left 4 Dead 2 at the same night. $120. At the time, I was very broke, so that was a lot of money. But yeah, I was happy. Both of those games were fantastic. And I don't know. It just sucks. It's just another company that kind of, I think, lost their way in more ways than one. And it's not really just about... I think a lot of people look at things like Assassin's Creed Shadows or whatever as pandering, and it's like, no, I think a lot of people really earnestly enjoy those games still. I've only heard really good things about the RPG, Assassin's Creed games. I just don't, they weren't for me. And so it's just like, but I also don't go online and kind of like make these long diatribes, which is, at this point, half of it maybe even is just AI generated, where it's just scraping Reddit and then regurgitating the same lukewarm remicrowave takes. So I guess I'm at a point cynically where I'm not even sure if the anger or vitriol I'm seeing is even a real person, or if it's just astroturf to hell. So a lot of the most public arenas of forums like Reddit are infected with bots. And so I just think, a Ubisoft situation is unique because their bottom line immediately came to roost. And I don't know. I think they made a lot of mistakes with certain key franchises like The Division and Watch Dogs, which they built a lot of hype around and then kind of fizzled. And so, I don't know. They never really found their footing. I think Assassin's Creed and Far Cry were definitely their two biggest, and then they had some good, like, kind of indie, more smaller scale titles. But Ubisoft, other than their relationship with Nintendo, never really got I guess Rainbow Six Siege was a pretty big hit. You know what I mean? Rainbow Six has kind of been another pillar for them. But they've just never really kind of fully... I feel like they need to get back to like that Ghost Recon, that Splinter Cell. There's a lot of those games that they've kind of gotten their roster that they kind of let stagnate. And I guess they just never really had the studios that a lot of these other bigger, the monopolistic giant monoliths that I always complain about. Ubisoft never quite got to that level. So, I don't know. It's interesting to dissect. I hope they don't go the way of Dodo. It sounds like they're going to get essentially taken over or invested in heavily to the point where it won't be the same anymore, which is surprisingly not too far off from what happened to Bungie at this point with Sony, where it doesn't sound like it will be very much of a Bungie thing going forward, but more of a Sony, like, you know, puppet. I don't know. That sounds so mean, but I don't know. They're going to assume direct control, which I guess is a nicer way of saying it. So anyway, I don't know, guys. I feel complicated. Gaming in the year 2025, and just like we're dead smack in the middle of this decade, it's just very dire. It just feels like a lot of things are changing, and that everybody's buying each other, and it's not just games, but it's also like movie studios buying each other, and it just feels like all the IP. It's like the IP wars, and like because I'm just, you know, the current climate, let's say it that way. The current climate is allowing these big monopolies to form, these big gigantic companies to buy each other and just become monolithic. As long as they kind of like grease the wheel a little bit, they get to just get these massive buyouts through, and all of these big companies are seeing it, and they're like, well, it's time to cash in, boys. And it's like they've all been waiting for this moment where they can all just start buying each other and become a big like, I mean, I hate to say it, but like I this is another topic I've kind of mentioned in the past. I'll throw it in here at the end, but Crunchyroll is essentially a monopoly in the anime industry in the West, at least in America. So I do think that's worth mentioning, is that's where we're headed, is one company kind of owning the whole thing. You know what I mean? And in a couple of years, it's going to be like Netflix, and then like some weird homunculus of all the other studios against them, and then like Crunchyroll as all of the anime. So it's going to be like 3 companies, and they're all going to own each other somehow. Anyway, I don't know, man. There's going to be no competition, and all of the streaming services will be $100 a month, and everyone's going to go to piracy, and then they're going to start cracking down on piracy, and it's just going to be this. So anyway, I kind of got off track there, but I do think it's all related. The current climate around media is very negative, I think, and it's very top heavy. It feels like all these companies are buying each other, and in the bloodbath, aftermath, whatever you want to say, I like combine the blooded math. It's basically that they are downsizing companies. You know, they buy. Look at Microsoft buying Bethesda and Activision. Immediately they start downsizing those companies because they just call them redundancies, because they have, oh, you have an art department? Well, we've got 50 art departments. Get out of here. So it's just like, So anyway, that's where I'm at. I'm kind of, you know, it's hard to feel bad for Ubisoft because they've made those grave mistakes with their corporate structure and been convicted of crimes and, you know, squandered some of their best talent. So I'm not pitiful for Ubisoft. I am nostalgic for a time when they were making great games, and they have these good IPs that I think could be great. But like, it's sad because it's very similar to the NetEase Destiny situation, where Destiny Rising, the mobile game, is doing things that Destiny, the actual game, needed for years, and they're doing them right away, right out the gate. Amazing quality of life, community support things that Destiny Rising is doing, and it's because it's, I hate to say it, it's an Asian company, or like it's maybe it's not even that. It's just an outside eyes, a different approach to development. And I mean, maybe personally it's the fact that they're, I don't know, probably that they get around a lot of regulations, and ultimately they're probably paying their people a lot less and getting a lot more work out of them. Not to say I know that for sure. So there's upsides and downsides to every situation. I'm not saying, I'm not glazing like Chinese developers, but I will say, I mean, the proof is in the pudding. You look at what NetEase has done with Destiny Rising, and it's stuff that the Destiny community has been begging for years in the full game. So that's kind of where I'm at. People are saying that it's a Chinese company that's going to be investing or taking over Ubisoft, and then maybe, you know, that's a good thing for their franchises. Maybe this will allow them to flourish. But it is also worrisome because, I mean, Destiny Rising is a gacha game, and so predatory gambling, you know, which is its own issue on its own in gaming. So, you know, nothing's perfect. Everything has its own layers. Just to say, you know, we talked about a lot of stuff in this episode, and you know, I don't want the comments to be like this political bloodbath or anything. It's an interesting topic to me because I grew up playing Assassin's Creed and Prince of Persia, and ultimately that's what the focus of this video really is I just want to kind of look back and say, you know, Ubisoft, they may have sucked, they did some stuff wrong, but they did give us some great memories, some great times. I remember playing Assassin's Creed Brotherhood. The story mode is amazing. The multiplayer was amazing. They made some incredible games, the Splinter Cell games. I even had good times with some of the jankier games, the Far Cry series. You know what I mean? So ultimately, I don't know, man. I guess I'm just sad to see. It's like the end of an era, really. Ubisoft was at a time kind of on top of their game, and you can see how they fumbled it, and that's where we're at now. Is just, I guess I mourn the potential there, is that they could have been something amazing. They could have been so much more, and instead, especially because they're like the biggest French developers I could think of. So I don't know. That's pretty much it. I think I've gotten it all out. I think I covered it all. But yeah, like I said, please guys, if you're gonna comment or like, stupid TV. I shouldn't be using this as a light. My TV as a light. But anyway, in the comments, if you end up watching this video at all, just be chill and talk about the games you loved and the things you do like. I think I prefer. I guess maybe this is just me getting older. Or this is me getting earlier. I just like hearing people talk about the things they like and they're passionate about, and that's why that's why I'm making these videos. These are just thoughts that are rattling around in my head. As soon as I saw that Reddit comment about Ubisoft and all these people with different hot takes about why they're failing, and it's this, it's that, it's this, it's that, it's this, and it just shows everybody kind of was soured on them, and for a variety of different reasons, and it just showed that they were kind of not they weren't making the games that really engaged people anymore. And I don't think it had anything to do with the color of the protagonist's skin. I think it had everything to do with the quality of the games. And after a while, Ubisoft just kind of became this content generation mill where they were just making the same games over and over again. Far Cry 6 is identical to 4 or whatever, stuff like that. So that's the biggest criticism I think they could have taken away, is that Ubisoft ended up making very cookie cutter experiences, not very satisfying story modes. Like by the end, I had no idea what the plot of Assassin's Creed was anymore. Anyway, my dog is laying on my microphone cord, so I'm going to end the video. Thanks again for watching. My name is Max, aka Local HJ, and this has been Rants and Rambles. Peace.